the Ticats Audio Network. This is the CFL This Week with Bubba O'Neil.
In the nation's capital, it's being called the Crumback. A Hail Mary was answered, but it was not enough for the Rough Riders. Has parity been reached in the Canadian Football League? And which player provides the most excitement in the CFL? Folks, get out of your seats. This is the CFL This Week on the Ticats Audio Network. I'm your host, Bubba O'Neil. You know what? As we always say, Three Down Friends, this is the podcast that gets down and dirty with the most outstanding columnists, broadcasters, and analysts that the Canadian game does have to offer. This week, certainly no different. As we open the door to the host of the Green Zone on 980 CJME and 650 CKOM, he's Jamie Nye. Thanks for joining us, bud.
Yeah, no problem. Let's get after it.
Sadly, it has not been home sweet home for this fella from the Elks game day broadcast on 630 CHAD. I see you smiling there, Dave Campbell. Thanks for checking in.
I'm smiling, but I'm not smiling. I'm smiling, but I'm not smiling. There you go.
Plus, he's the sports editor, and he owns that seat from the Winnipeg Sun. Ted Wyman, we certainly appreciate you for checking in.
Hey, glad to be here, guys. Good to see everybody's face.
Okay, let's talk about what was one of the craziest weeks we have seen in the Canadian Football League. Let me just recap this slightly. 24 points scored by the Tiger Cats in the third quarter. The Elks, this crazy home losing streak continues. The Argonauts and Alouettes trade punches for 4 straight quarters. In Ottawa, it was called the Miracle on Bank Street number 2. And then, boy, in Regina, it was just an unbelievable game that had all kinds of emotion and came right down to the very end. I'll start with you, Mr. Jamie Nye. The game of the week was?
The game of the week had to be Ottawa winning. I have to go with the Ottawa Red Blacks double overtime with the Dustin Crum coming out of nowhere. As much as, I was at the building in Regina watching that gong show of an ending, it was a little bit slow, but Winnipeg going out and seeing Dustin Crum and seeing that team and seeing Bob Dice and seeing the energy back in the nation's capital, I think that was a game the Ottawa Red Blacks desperately needed, and leads me to thinking some things about Calgary, Ottawa this week, if there could be a upset number 2 for the Ottawa Red Blacks.
Ted?
Yeah, I have to agree with Jamie, and I'll say that just adding to it, I'd say that I just think that was the best game for the CFL. I think the Ottawa Red Blacks doing what they did in front of their fans, they had a long losing streak at home as well. They've been having some declining attendance, but to do what they did in that second half behind a really exciting player in Dustin Crum, I think that's just fantastic news for this league. And, Winnipeg winning all the time is boring. I mean, it's been happening for 4 or 5 years now. And I think for a lot of people, other than in Winnipeg, believe me, because people in Winnipeg are not happy about what happened there. But, I think that the idea of other teams coming up with situations like that and showing that, yeah, just because we are behind, just because we're not favored, Winnipeg was favored by 10 points, and just because, Winnipeg has Zach Collaros and that host of players, it doesn't mean you can't beat them. Really thought that was a great job of coaching by Bob Dice, and maybe a star is born in Dustin Crum. That was a pretty fantastic performance.
Dave, take it over.
Yeah, I mean, I think 3 of the 4 games were really, really good. The one that wasn't was the one that involved the team I cover with the Elks. But I thought Friday's game was really back and forth. But it's Ottawa. It's Ottawa, Winnipeg. Considering the circumstances, it's a David versus Goliath kind of scenario. The way Dustin Crum just hung in there and kept fighting and kept battling. And the dramatic end to the fourth quarter, the dramatic end to the game with Crum, and that fan base they deserve it. I mean, now they've won 2 straight games at home, which is very good for them. Gives you a little hope if you're in Edmonton. You go, well, maybe an unproven quarterback could carry the day one day, and maybe this streak could turn around at some point. But yeah, I mean, how can you not How could you not look at what Ottawa did and not consider that being the game of the week? And honestly, the 3 games, especially the 2 on Saturday, if no one ever watched the CFL in their life, this is what you expect out of the CFL. It had everything. The old Bob Cole, everything is happening, and that's what happened on Saturday, especially in those 2 games.
Yeah, Bubba, can we go? It's 1A, 1B, and 1C with those 3 games because it's pretty darn close for all of them.
And I thought, Jamie, that really, you know what? I'm going to say that I thought the game of the week for me was the Riders game. And yes, I do agree with all you guys there about what happened with the Red Blacks, the David Goliath situation, all of that. But I felt like if I analyzed the kind of game, I thought really it was a crazy fourth quarter and a fourth quarter really, and then an overtime. Whereas I thought the Riders game, I thought it had it all from the very beginning, with the kick returns. I thought it represented everything that the Canadian Football League is all about. And Jamie, you would know this because you were there at the stadium. As you said, the game is never over till it's over.
Yeah, it is the CFL. And like Dustin Crum's come back and Toronto, Montreal going back and forth. But that, whatever, it wasn't really a Hail Mary tip, grab, maybe a push to the back, offensive pass interference. Mason Fine put up a prayer and it was answered with Tevin Jones going to the end zone. And of course the place is going berserk because about 15 minutes earlier it was dead quiet because Trevor Harris was being carted off the field, right? Like that was a wave of emotions. The offense wasn't that good. You had Mario Alford being unreal with 2 punt return touchdowns, and then the injury and Mason Fine comes in. And then all of a sudden it's Rene Paredes, who seems like he's Mr. Automatic when he has a game-winning field goal by 50+, and there it was again. So, yeah, it was everything you want in a football game, except for the injury to Trevor Harris.
And it's more about carrying punches, guys, right? I mean, that's the one thing about that game that was really cool. In Ottawa, it was Winnipeg punched the whole first half, Ottawa punched the whole second half. In that second game, which was, I think both of them really showed the CFL, but that second game, it was back and forth the whole time. And that beauty of the last few minutes in the CFL where so much can happen and you get the ball with whatever it was, 30, 40 seconds left for Calgary, and you can still get down there and get a field goal. This is what the NFL doesn't have, right? It just doesn't usually have it because of the situation with the clock and the timeouts. The CFL is set up for this, for multiple scores in those last few minutes, and we really saw that.
Well, hold on. Let me just stop you right there, Ted. And this is the argument that I'm hearing coming out of Regina, or at least some types, is that the touchdown pass, he should, or like on the touchdown reception, he should not have gone in the end zone. That he should have just dropped down at the 1 yard line. Guys, is that a ridiculous thought, Dave, or not?
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous, in my opinion. You just don't do that. I mean, not in this league. I mean, you go to the end zone, right? And there was time on the clock to stop the Stampeders. You got to give them credit. I mean, Jake Mayer was on point. They had great execution on that final drive, but you can't tell Tevin Jones to go sit on the 1 yard line and just kill the clock. I think that's not what we do in this league.
But Dickinson did say it to him. That's the thing that blows my mind is Dickinson actually said after the game, he said, well, I told Tevin, you couldn't have gone down at the 1 and then we could have killed some time. But then he, of course, says he's got a score there. But Tevin Jones after the game has said, I should have known the clock better and gone down at the 1. I was like, what are we doing? What kind of weird world are we living in where we're actually talking about going down at the 1? You're guaranteed a touchdown. You're down by 6. Did you not see Shea Patterson get stuffed in the first half on 3rd and 1? Did you not remember you stuffing the Edmonton Elks 3 times from the 1 yard line in week 1? Like, get the touchdown and get the lead, and then, hey, defense, make a tackle for crying out loud for the Rough Riders.
No question about it, Jamie. I mean, I don't even understand them talking like that. The guy, especially in that situation, I mean, he didn't even think he had a chance for that ball. All of a sudden, it's in his arms, and he's got a chance for the end zone. Are you going to go down? Like, honestly, who thinks that quickly anyways? And I've never talked to a football player that has that kind of mentality anyway. You know, like, are you really not going to get to that end zone? I have seen it. We've seen it in the NFL where guys lie down. I think it happened in the Super Bowl, and it was a boring kneel out. Well, let's not have any of that. You know, I'm really glad that it unfolded the way it did. Unfortunately for the Riders, they lose the game, but it was still made for fantastic excitement in theater.
If you're down by 2, I get it. Because then you can like just take a knee, kill the clock, kick the field goal, and a walk-off chip shot. Sure, but you're down by 6 points. You need to get in the end zone. So yeah, ridiculous is right, Bubba.
Well, that's how wild that game was. Is that that game got broken down to that far. Now, Ted, let me come to you and go back to the Ottawa game, the Crumback.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to put this nicely. We talk about Goliath. Goliath has looked small twice this season. Do we have an issue there?
Well, that's the question that's coming up. It really is. I mean, you can't help but think it a little bit. Maybe you're just, the thoughts are creeping in that this Winnipeg team is slipping a bit. I don't think it's a big fall at this point. I mean, they obviously have played well in most of their games. They were so far ahead against Ottawa, you can't help but wonder if there was just a little bit of a taking the foot off the gas situation there. And once Ottawa came out and started punching in the second half, they couldn't get back up to speed. But I'll tell you right now, in Winnipeg, I think most of the fans here, the people who are reacting to my Twitter and to the stories that I've written, have basically said, this is nothing but a pure collapse by the Bombers. They're barely even giving Ottawa any credit, and they're basically saying, the Bombers fell apart, they quit, they stopped playing. Well, I don't believe that one bit. I think the Ottawa Red Blacks came out with a really good game plan in the second half, and they wore the Bombers down. Let's not forget, the Bombers actually stopped them twice on downs in the fourth quarter. So they were pressured all fourth quarter long, and they kept making plays to just survive. And then Brady Oliveira fumbles, they get another chance. Wolotarski and Kolaros. Wolotarski took the blame on himself for that interception, but between the two of them, there was a pick six. And then, then you've got a situation where this defense has been on the field the entire second half, and Crum comes down and executes a great 94-yard drive. I give Ottawa all the credit for what happened there. They wore Winnipeg down.
Which leads us to our second question. And this is a tricky one. I think the best we could say is, has Dustin Crum, Dave, proved anything to you? This is now a second half against Hamilton where he's looked pretty efficient and done what he did in the second half. 3 first downs gained in the first half of that game against Winnipeg, and I believe 20 in the second half. What do we think about this guy?
Well, I think first of all, you got to give Bob Dice credit. He could have gone back to Nick Arbuckle because it's the so-called safe route, and he didn't do that. He went to Dustin Crum. I think Dustin Crum, like all young quarterbacks, are learning. Coming off the bench is a lot different than starting the game. It's a different animal. Look, I like it. I mean, you look around the league. This league's in trouble with quarterbacks. They need to find the next ones, the next batch. I mean, we're not in that middle of the last decade where you had, Riley and Bo and Hank, Henry Burris, and, there was just the league. It was the golden age of quarterbacks here in the CFL. We don't have that anymore. They're trying to do that in Edmonton with someone. Obviously right now it's Taylor Cornelius, but, I'll give organizations credit for not going with retreads, for not, we got to get the veteran quarterback here. First of all, they're not available in abundance. And second, some of them aren't as good as they used to be. And 3, some of them are hurt. So, I know that the comment I get is, well, why can't the Elks get Dane Evans? Well, why would the Lions trade Dane Evans to the Elks? It doesn't make sense. I give the Red Blacks a lot of credit that they it's a risk to go with Dustin Crum, and it may be disastrous on Sunday, like when they play the Stampeders. He may have a really, really bad performance, and he may not. But I think this league has to find new blood in the quarterbacking, or else this league is just going to look like the XFL or the USFL. That's the worry that I have. So I think I give Bob Dice all the credit in the world that he took a risk. And I think it's a good risk right now, and you got to grow with some new blood here. And there's no time to wait. There's no time for, we got to wait for 3-4 years until, he understands the CFL game. We are not in that scenario anymore. You got to know now, pretty much.
Jamie, I thought the call by Derek Taylor, the visiting call on the winning touchdown, was great. He called him the newest for the day CFL star.
Yeah, and that's what it is with quarterbacks. You can do it today, but to be a great one, you have to do it tomorrow, and then you got to do it next week, and then the week after, and then the week after. I think we're learning that with Jake Maier right now. When he came in, it was 300 yards, 300 yards, 300 yards. Oh, he's the next one. The Calgary Stampeders move off of Bo Levi Mitchell, and now this year, it's starting to go. Have other teams figured him out a little bit on how to go after Jake Maier. It is hard to be a consistent great quarterback like we see from Zach Collaros, or as Dave was talking about, the golden age of CFL, when in 2013 I think the starters around the league, I think everybody had one when it comes to a great starter, from Ricky Ray to Darian Durant to Anthony Calvillo, and on the list went, right? So we need Mason Fine to show up this week. Like, the league needs Mason Fine to show up. They need Taylor Powell. They need Dustin Crum. They need these quarterbacks. And if it's Trey Ford ever gets a chance in Edmonton, or Jarrett Dagey gets another chance, they need these guys to shine. So it was nice to see Dustin Crum show that little bit of glimmer that maybe we got a new star to get, like Chad Kelly. It's great to have Chad Kelly play well in his first year as a starter in the CFL.
I'm really hoping that Dustin Crum continues to shine and turns into a star, because how could this league not benefit from a guy who can throw the ball, run the ball, and is a rocket scientist?
But Ted, I'll ask you this: is Dakota Prokop, is he that guy? Like, who's the guy in Winnipeg? I mean, at some point, considering the career that has been Zach Collaros, and he's been in 3 of our 4 markets, like, at some point this has got to come to an end. I don't know what the succession plan is there for the Blue Bombers.
Well, for Zach's sake, I'm going to touch wood for what you just said there, because honestly, the guy, he has been really blessed, I'd say, and that's a term a lot of football players use, but in Winnipeg, things have gone really well for him. He's been protected incredibly well by that offensive line with the 2 giants on the ends, and I mean, we have seen some slipping there, though, and he's been hit quite a bit this year. There's been sacks, but he's also been knocked down a bunch. I don't think the protection has been as strong, so you do have to worry that with it's happened to almost every other team since the Bombers got Collaros. He hasn't been hurt, except for his ankle was pretty wonky in the Grey Cup last year, but for the most part, he hasn't been hurt. Every other team, I think, has had an injury in that area. The law of averages are that, at some point he's going to get dinged up at very least. So the Bombers, as far as I would say, would be going with Drew Brown as number 2. Drew Brown's the guy that they've put in there to pretty much handle the office exactly as Zach Collaros handles it. Is he the next guy like Mason Fine? We don't know how he's going to do yet. Dustin Crum, all these backups that are coming in and are getting their chances. I would think a lot of people who have seen Drew Brown play think that he could handle it. I've seen him actually start a game. He threw 2 pick sixes, and he's finished up some games, and he's been in there and done some things. He's done reasonably well. I have no evidence to suggest that he's going to come and be, anywhere close to what the Bombers get out of Collaros. So obviously, Winnipeg really wants Collaros to stay healthy. He's got this is the first of a 3-year contract. He's with the Bombers through the 2025 season, which is when they're going to host the Grey Cup. So the plan is for him to be around here for a while and to be strong. So that's what they're looking for. I do believe that Drew Brown can step in. Dakota Prokop has a lot of experience, but they'd be like any other team if they lost him. It would be a pretty massive blow.
It's amazing around the Canadian Football League that we're talking about this, because yes, in the early part of the season, real early, we're talking about the sort of diminished play of some of the veterans, and Bo Levi maybe didn't get out of the gate with Hamilton real quick, but right now, as we enter week 7, we're talking about not just second string. I mean, remember, Ottawa lost Tyree Adams as well too. So Dustin Crum is essentially a third-string quarterback. Jamie Nye, we look at what's going on at Mason Fine. He could be listed at one time, maybe last year, a third-string quarterback. In Hamilton, they're going to start a third-string quarterback this week against the undefeated Argos. It is amazing to me that these. I guess you're going to start to Dave Campbell. You're going to have to kind of look at it as an opportunity for these guys to step forward.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely, and and we're getting a flip here just because in the past, not too long ago, if a veteran quarterback went down, you would go find the next veteran quarterback or someone that has been in a CFL offense for a few years. Or you don't have the affordability of that anymore because they're just not around. So you don't have a choice, and I think it's kind of exposing teams for the better, even though it might be a painful process for the Ticats on the weekend when they play the Argos with Powell, but you never know, right? And I think you have to just not be afraid to take the chance. And again, you don't have a choice here. We need to find the new crop of quarterbacks now. This is the best way of doing it. The tough thing is if Powell has a tough game, for example. Oh, well, because I heard this with Jarrett Nagy when he had the tough outing in Ottawa. Well, I guess he's not a starting quarterback. We're making the judgment very, very fast, and I don't think that's fair. Although right now, don't have really a choice. Someone has to step up, or else you go to the next one. But hopefully that we see a little bit more settling down in the quarterback area. But what are you going to do? You can't go out and just grab quarterbacks like you used to. So you got to go with whoever's the next man up.
Just last quick one on this topic, Dave, just coming right back to you. Because I know there's a lot of people that are asking this question. And what's going on with Trey Ford?
I honestly think there's a difference in philosophy between head coach and the quarterback. Last year, Trey Ford showed some good things. He won his first start in the CFL in Hamilton. He wasn't great, but he showed that ability to go off script and be exciting. And then if you remember the play the next week in Calgary or at home against the Stampeders, he was sacked, and then he rolled around and threw a 45-yard pass to Kyle Oxley, and then he got hurt 2 plays later. And then didn't see him until late in the year, had the late start or the start in the final game of the season against the Lions at home, and he was okay. Came to camp and was honestly right behind Taylor Cornelius. I think both of them had a really good camp, and then I think Trey fell off a little bit. And when I hear Chris Jones speak about him, I think he's pretty blunt to the point, saying, well, he hasn't played as well. And then you go, well, your number one, so-called, isn't playing that well either. So you kind of look silly. But I do think you got to look deeper, and I believe there are opportunities to get Trey Ford on the field. I got a feeling that Trey Ford doesn't want any opportunity other than quarterback. So, example, Kyle Oxley wanted to be a quarterback last year. He played receiver most of the season. And you can have 2 quarterbacks on the field now, right? And Trey Ford has got an excellent skill set that you can put him on the field, but I believe he is locked into, I'm a quarterback and I'd rather just be a quarterback. So I think it's more than just he's not performing well, which I do think there is some validity to it. Jones has said it's a lack of concentration in a lot of things I see in practice. So I think it's a philosophy difference, in my opinion, and a little bit of a clash, and that's probably why he's not playing.
Ted, to you here. We've been seeing it all over the league this year. Jamal Morrow, he takes 2 punts for touchdowns. We're seeing what we just don't see in the NFL anymore, the kick return or the punt return. If it's not going for touchdowns, it's going for major yardage. And we're seeing some real exciting plays, and I guess we call them explosion plays. Who's providing the most excitement to you in the Canadian Football League in terms of just when they touch the ball, you've got to lock in and watch because you never know where it could end up?
Well, I'm not going to say Jamal Morrow, that's for sure. Because it was definitely Mario Alford that had those punt returns. So,
sorry. That's right. Thank you for that.
But, obviously he's a very exciting player. Well, hey man, I love, my favorite thing about the CFL, to be honest, is the kick return game. I love it. I hate how it works in the NFL. There's nothing on kickoffs. The punt returns are almost, it's all fair catches. I understand that it's about safety on that smaller field, but I'm just glad that in the CFL we have the larger field and the ability for these things to happen. Greg McCrae had a 112-yard field goal return last week for Winnipeg. And, I mean, that's an exciting play. People love it. I think Janarian Grant is a guy who's one of the most exciting players in this league and has been for quite a time. He's had 8 kick returns, and he's got 2 in the playoffs, so 10 for his career, which doesn't make him Henry Gizmo Williams or anything like that, but one of the best of his era, that's for sure. And unfortunately, he's hurt, could be out a while, so I'm not going to say him. I really like Austin Mack in Montreal. I mean, this guy is clearly a playmaker and makes you understand why Geno Lewis wasn't absolutely necessary on their priority list for bringing him back, because this guy's really good. And Dalton Schoen in Winnipeg is another guy that always seems to be very interesting. I will venture to say he's not having as good a season as he did last year. He and Collaros have only connected on 55% of their passes. He's still second in the league in receiving, in both receptions and yards, but 55% only of the receptions. I'm just saying, I think Winnipeg's offense would be considerably more proficient if those two were connecting better, and he did have a big drop there against Ottawa. So those are some names I'm going to throw out there. I like Chad Kelly as well. I really like seeing what happens when the ball's in Chad Kelly's hands so far this year.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
Yeah, well, like Mario Alford in Saskatchewan is the guy, whenever the ball goes to his way, people they're not going to get a drink or another hot dog. Like, they're waiting to see what he does. And it's insane. He has broken the Rider record, like, in a Rider career for kick, punt, missed field goal return touchdowns. He's at 6. He's only been here for like a year. Like, they traded for him last year, and he's done that already, passing Corey Holmes. Like, that is amazing stuff. And he was doing it in Montreal, but they have Chandler Worthy, who would be a guy I'd put on the list as one of the most exciting. Janarian Grant, unfortunately, is hurt. McAllister, and Danbridge, like, there's some new returners out there that are doing some things across the Canadian Football League, and maybe get them on offense a little bit more. You get that excitement. So there are plenty of guys, but right now it's Mario Alford every time. Now my request, and I've said this a few times the last 2 weeks, is to Kelly Jeffrey to somehow find a way to make a player 5 for Mario Alford on offense and get him into space, because I'm wondering if he could be the next, like, Brandon Banks type offensive weapon in the Canadian Football League too.
And that's a great point, Jamie, because here in Hamilton, we experienced that for, I'm going to say, for the better part of 4 to 5 years of Brandon Banks' career, with Kent Austin as the head coach, who refused to put him on offense. He's replaced or stepped aside and moved upstairs to the office. June Jones says, "How are you not on offense?" And he goes on to have an MOP season, right? Within, 2018 and 2019, especially when he dominated the league. So, yeah, I just feel I'm with you. Like, you got to get these guys on the offense, or at least find some type of gadget plays for these guys to play, Dave. Mm-hmm. What do you like, Dave?
Well, the kick return game is, I think, what really defines the CFL and what really separates it. The special teams really separates the CFL from the NFL when it comes to the excitement part of it. And it's a part of the game that the Elks have been looking for forever, sadly, that they just don't have that guy.
Look, you had the best for a long time.
Yeah, Henry the Gizmo Williams. There was nobody better. I mean, he had more returns called back than he actually scored, which is amazing. But I look at Alford, I look at the returners that have burned the Elks. There's a lot of them. Alford is definitely one I look to. And Janarian Grant I look to as well. And they're both different, where Alford just hits the hole, hits the seam, and his cutback ability is so good, where Grant is, same sort of skill, but he breaks tackles, and I love that. I love that when a returner can break tackles. You got last year, Terry Williams was exciting with both the Red Blacks and the Lions, and I like that Ted said Chad Kelly. I think having the excitement of a quarterback that can throw the ball, and he's fearless, and he's going to throw picks, but he's fearless. but he's going to make plays too, and he's going to make plays with his feet. I would love to see that from the quarterback side of things too, because it is a quarterback-driven league. But I look at the returners, so I would put Alford and Grant pretty much on the same level as far as excitement in the CFL. You look around the league, and I thought Kevin Brown was someone that could have been in that category too. He definitely was last year for 7 games for the Elks, and he just hasn't been the same. You look at the receivers. Dominic Rhymes is someone that I always look at. I mean, his circus catches are incredible. But I love the return game in this league, and I would put Alford and Grant on the same level.
I believe he's banged up, but Dedman, he probably belongs on that list as well, too. Yep. I mean, he's had an outstanding career in the Canadian Football League. I know he went to, I believe, the Miami Dolphins, and now he's back, but I think he's banged up. All right, guys, this is an interesting question, and I know it's a philosophy for many different people thinking different things. Some people like the dynasty. Some people like parity. We've got one undefeated team in the Canadian Football League, and that being the Toronto Argonauts. But when you really kind of look at it, in some ways, they've had 2 bye weeks already. So I take that for what it's worth. The rest of the teams are all kind of, including the Bombers, even though they're 4-2, kind of meddling. Are we walking down the road, Jamie, to the word parity in the Canadian Football League?
Thank goodness, because here in Saskatchewan, we're sick of the Bombers winning all the time. It's really getting annoying. But it is, especially when they're in the Ryder locker room during Grey Cup. That didn't go over very well.
But they lost, Jamie. They helped everybody out.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks to Chad Kelly's comeback. But parity, like this week, parity's great. We need it. We can, especially at the bottom of the standings. Like when there's at the start of the year, I'm thinking, is Hamilton, Ottawa, and Edmonton all going to be bad? Like, is this just going to be a walk for the 6 teams to make the playoffs? And it's like the free space on the bingo card for that's not good. But now Hamilton's rattled off 2 straight wins. Ottawa's rattled off 2 wins. They have a good young quarterback. If this was 3 weeks ago, I'm picking the Calgary Stampeders automatically on Sunday over the Ottawa Red Blacks. I'm picking the Red Blacks this week because that was fun. I want to see a repeat of Dustin Crum. I believe in magic a little bit here. So hopefully Mason Fine can keep the Riders at that level too, because parity is great, because you want to turn on the TV on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or a Thursday night and go, I might be in for a good football game here, rather than is this going to be a walk? So I'm all for parity in any league, anywhere, anytime.
Ted?
Yeah, the first couple of weeks of the season are basically preseason, and I think that's one of the reasons why I thought Winnipeg really dominated in those first couple of weeks, and they looked just like they did previously. But then since then, it just seems like the other teams have found their way a little bit more and have been able to implement their game plans and impose their will, and that's how Winnipeg has sort of been brought back to the pack. Toronto is very much the elite team in the league right now. I mean, not only are they 4-0, but I think they're averaging 38.7 points per game. That's an incredibly high number, and that's going to make them awfully tough to beat. If you can't keep them off the scoreboard, there's not that many teams in this league that can put up more than that. So I really like the way they look, but I'm sure they're beatable. BC has proven, Toronto proved that BC was beatable, but they're a very exciting team as well. It is good for the league, Jamie. I'm going to admit it. It's good for the league that Winnipeg has been brought back to the pack, because I think they were 15-3 last year and 11-3 the year before. So that's 2 pretty darn good seasons in a row, and they won the Grey Cup the season before that. So you don't need that all the time. I can tell you guys, Dave, I can tell you, when I was a kid growing up, I hated that Edmonton won all the time. And, it's just, come on, give someone else a chance, right? So I can understand it coming from the rest of the league here. I think parity is the best thing that could possibly happen in this league. And you had this past weekend, no lead is safe. It didn't matter what the odds were, who won these games. And that's absolutely great as far as I'm concerned.
But Ted, we had Jeff Hamilton in from your market in a couple weeks ago, and he's talking about how the people at IG Field, they're booing the Bombers. Like, they're booing the Bombers. Talk about impatient.
Imagine what would happen if the Elks jumped out to a lead this week, right? I mean, I can see that happening.
Oh, please. I want to see that. Let's go.
I would love to see that.
Last week. Yeah, there's a few grumbles there, right? But the Bombers came back strong in that game. Look, people do get impatient. Hey, 30,000 people showed up. If they want to boo, they can boo. The Bombers are doing great at the gate. The games are an absolute blast. It's a fantastic atmosphere. And it's exactly what this league would like to be in every single market, with that kind of atmosphere, with that kind of crowd. And if they want to boo, go for it. The Bombers, they deserve some leeway, in my opinion, because they've been pretty darn good, and they still are pretty good. But, fans pay what they pay, and they can do what they want.
Dave, I waited for you to answer this question last, and I know this could be tough at 0-6, but your thoughts?
Well, I see tiers in the league, right? I mean, the top three are Toronto, BC, Winnipeg, however you feel about that, and then there's a drop off. The Riders are in there in that middle tier, probably maybe the best of the middle tier, and I'm happy to see that Hamilton has won, has started to win, Ottawa started to win, Calgary won. Because maybe those teams who are kind of near the bottom are starting to inch up a little bit more. And then the Elks, it's far and away they're the worst team in the league. No one can hide from that. So I think it's good that you're seeing the bottom teams win, because then that just means hopefully we're going to get more competitive games, starting with this week. And can they challenge that top tier? I think that's the key is, how much of a threat are these teams to those teams? And obviously I do agree there's a little bit of cracks with the Bombers, although it's not that bad. I still think they're a very good football team. But, I think it's good that the Ottawas, the Calgarys, the Hamiltons have started winning here.
Ted and Jamie, I don't know how you guys at the beginning of the season when you did your preseason prognostications. I will speak for myself. Dave, I had the Elks as taking major steps this year. Was I out of my mind?
I said 9-9. And I guess I was betting on improvement from Taylor Cornelius. And there's a lot of controversy about him. Why did they give him that 2-year contract with 50% guaranteed in year 2? It doesn't look very good right now. But at the time, he was showing some progress. There were some warts in his game, but he was showing the ability that, okay, maybe he can start inching up and being one of the better quarterbacks in this league, and it hasn't happened. And they would have lost him to the XFL. He would have walked. There's no question about that. So, Chris Jones did what he felt he needed to do, and that was sign Taylor Cornelius. So I had them at 9-9. Far and away from that now, it looks like. But, you look at week 1, they should have beat the Riders. They should have scored a TD from the 1-yard line, for goodness sakes. And if that happened, who knows? Who knows what this would have done to this team's psyche? They're not a very confident group. That you talk about belief versus doubt. And that's a very thin line, in my opinion. And you look at the game last Thursday, they get a turnover on the first play on the kickoff, and then they flounder that. They only have to settle for a field goal. But they were kind of balanced, right? But it's an and then Tim White gets the big gain, and then they score, and then there's a sag. This team waits for the catastrophic moments to happen. And when it happens, it's spectacular. It's unbelievable. They're not a very confident group right now. They got a lot of injuries on their 6-game injury list, and a lot of them are veterans that are leaders on this team. So, but you know what? Hey, I know people are calling for Chris Jones' head, but nothing's going to happen there, I think, because you got the football operations cap. If they let him go, that would be catastrophic to their football operations in the future. It's not good now. They're working about $500,000 under budget compared to the other league teams in the league. So they'll get some relief in 2024, but it does feel like another get-through year. The one thing I will say about Jones is that I do appreciate he's going with continuity now instead of constantly changing, and I think that's because he had a full off season and with G. Roy Simon, his assistant GM, and they were able to look at the roster and get the people they want. But clearly, They're not coached well enough. They don't have enough quality players. They have some good players, but they're definitely far from a team right now.
Yeah, and I had the not 9-9, but I had the Elks competing for kind of could it be a crossover spot for them because I witnessed it with Chris Jones in Saskatchewan. In 2016, he took over a 3-win team. It was only a 6-win team that year, and then the next year they took a big jump, and they were a Ricky Ray drive away from going to the Grey Cup through the East in 2017, and then in 2018, they were hosting, a West a playoff game. So that's where I went, okay, here is the trajectory of what Chris Jones is going to do. He's going to throw all the stuff at the wall and see what sticks in year 1 and refine it in year 2. And I'm stunned. I'm shocked that the Elks are 0-6. I truly am, because I thought it was going to be a much better season. And hey, to Dave's point, they're a CJ Sims brain fart and a 1-yard gamble or 1-yard stuff away from being 2-4 rather than 0-6. And the Riders would be 1-5.
Wow. And I'm sorry. I just honestly, I want to chime in and just say Chris Jones just needs to be better. Based on what you've said here, Dave, it makes sense. I understand the constraints that they're under, but he has to be better. I do not think he's done anywhere close to a good enough job. I don't think his personnel decisions have been that great, and I don't think he's coaching well with what they've got right now. And his steadfastness with Taylor Cornelius. I mean, how many quarterbacks get this many chances? That being said, if I'm the Elks, I'm throwing Taylor Cornelius out there against Winnipeg this week on a short week, trying to rebound from what just happened, and I'm letting him run wild. I mean, look what happened when the pocket collapsed. Dustin Crum was gone, and it was designed really well because there was nobody there in the middle, and he was able to run like crazy. Taylor Cornelius can do that. What you just need out of him is to throw the ball with some accuracy when he needs to, but he doesn't have to do it all day long. And I'm sure the Bombers are going to be trying to be prepared for that. They don't want to let him beat him with their legs. But I'm telling you, they're practicing once this week, and that is today. And then they have a walkthrough tomorrow, and then it's the game. There's not a lot of time to prepare for this Elks, what the Elks are going to bring.
Well, as long as Taylor Cornelius remembers that he's a right-handed quarterback and not a left-handed quarterback, and I think we'll be okay.
Well, that's just it with the Elks. Man, they really love to do crazy things to lose games. Like Taylor Cornelius, left-handed, CJ Sims, and then 1 yard, can't execute from 1 yard. It's man, the Elks are finding new and creative ways to lose, but that's why they're 0-6, I guess.
Well, maybe they turn into the new Red Blacks very soon in the second half, or at least in the next third of the season. Guys, our Week 7 has the potential in many ways to be as good as the week we have just visualized and been shocked about and have been talking about. Let me run through the games. Elks at Bombers. Argonauts, Tiger Cats, Riders and Lions, Red Blacks and Stampeders. Ted, the game of the week will be.
Oh, man, this is a tough one, I tell you, because I'm really excited about that Ottawa-Calgary matchup after they're both coming off of wins. But and I also really want – I'm always excited about Toronto-Hamilton. I think it's a great matchup. With Toronto playing as well as they have been and Hamilton coming – off playing a lot better lately. I think that's the one that I would pick if Hamilton had healthy quarterbacks. But then again, we've seen a rookie come in and do something that he did already. So maybe it's still my pick. I really like that that Hamilton-Toronto game. I think more people need to be watching the Argos and understanding just how good they are. And maybe nobody in Toronto cares, but the rest of this league loves. People across this country love the Canadian game, and the Toronto Argos are an exciting team to watch. So that's the one for me.
Dave?
It's clearly Thursday's game. I mean, come on now. Elks and Bombers, come on. No. I'm looking, honestly, I'm looking at Red Blacks and Stampeders because whoever wins this game, that's a huge victory. Someone's going to win their third game of the year, and they're going to be able to separate, if you're the Stampeders, a little bit from the pack, and obviously potentially tie the Riders. Or if you're the Red Blacks, if they win that game, boy, what a win that would be. They'd be second in the potentially second in the East. So I look at that game. It's two and three teams, but boy, the consequences of a win is very, very positive, and the consequences of a loss is I wouldn't say devastating, but it'd be tough for that team that would lose their fourth game.
Jamie, before we go to you, like the Stampeders, we haven't really touched much on them. Do they have an identity? Like, do we know who they are?
No. I'm still trying to figure out what are they a strong defensive team that's going to get by? Is it a Jake Mayer team? I thought it was going to be a Kadeem Carey or Dedrick Mills, like run it down your throat type offense after, the start of the season, and it's just they're still trying to find it. When they do, they might be a dangerous football team down the back half of the season. But yeah, I'm not really sure yet on the Calgary Stampeders, which is why I'm going with the upset this week with Ottawa shocking the world again on the road.
Really?
Yeah. I am. Yeah, I'm picking the Ottawa Red Blacks this week.
I like
now,
it.
I know what Calgary's going to do. They're going to spy all over the place on Dustin. Like, he is not going to have the space that he had against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. But I also like chaos, and I've been picking a lot of favorites this year, and I'm getting bored. So I'm going to go – I want to see chaos. I want to see the Elks beat Winnipeg. I want to see Mason Fine light up the BC Lions. Let's go Taylor Powell against the Toronto Argonauts to hand them their first loss. Give me chaos like I got in Week 6. It gave me an appetite for chaos. I want more of it this week.
Does that mean you're taking the Elks, Jamie?
No. I want to see it. But I'm not taking the Edmonton Elks.
Well, Ted, can you imagine the IG faithful how they'll react to a loss there? The season will be over, for crying out loud.
Be music to my ears.
No, not that. I mean, I do think this is still a very veteran team that would even handle that, guys. If it happened, they'd handle it. They don't seem to panic. I think they'd regroup and they have a bye week coming up. I think it would be okay. But no, that the fans would not be happy. Obviously, they like winning. It's what's attracting so many people to that.
They're
stadium.
spoiled.
They are spoiled, but the players like winning too, and they're a bit spoiled, right? They were shocked last week. I was in the locker room. I was fortunate enough to be in Ottawa, and I was in the locker room, and it was just stunned silence. And it was just, when you went to talk to a guy, it was like they all wanted to blame themselves for it, which probably isn't a bad quality, but it was the prevailing words that they were giving me was, I love winning and I really hate losing, and I don't like this feeling because it hasn't happened very often. That game actually reminded me of the Grey Cup, to be honest. I felt like the Bombers really let the Grey Cup slip away against Toronto, and that's what the room was like then as well, just not the same magnitude. But I don't see it happening against the Elks. I just don't see this team letting that happen. But of course, the fans would not be happy because it would be really showing not just a crack in the armor, but a significant slip.
Jamie, to that Riders and Lions game that you'll be a part of, are we really ready to anoint the Lions yet?
Well, no, but that defense is unbelievable. Like, they are so good. Matthew Betts with 9 sacks. Like, that is ridiculous stuff that's coming off the BC Lions defensive line. And that's what I look at. But of course, you saw Vernon Adams Jr. throw 6 interceptions. But outside of that game against Toronto, like, he's thrown 9 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. If you I know you can't take away the 6, but that one bad game showed. But he's been managing more often than not. So I think the BC Lions are right now the favorite to win the West. I still have them ranked above the Bombers because I've seen more blemishes in Winnipeg than I have in BC. But it all comes down to big play VA. And if he can not be the guy who's just going to throw it around and throw 14 passes deep in a game just because, then the BC Lions are going to win. But if he's that guy who just wants to launch it up and see what happens, well, that's going to put the BC Lions defense on the backs up against the wall. So I really do like the BC Lions, but it's all up to Vernon Adams Jr. if he can maintain more of a game manager within his natural gunslinger attitude.
Dave, are they the best team? in the West?
I would. The Lions, boy, yeah. I mean, I look at the Argos and I look at what they're doing offensively, and it's hard not to pick them. But I probably would lean towards the Lions because I think they have good balance. When you talk about complementary football, I think they play it the best. The Bombers, I think, will be up there and will challenge. My concern is their aging and what does a long season do to them when we get to October, and get to November. And, as Ted referenced, the O-line hasn't provided the same protection. I mean, there are times where Stanley Bryant has looked old, Let's just be blunt. And they have a lot of 30-plus on that team. But I think they'll be there and challenging. But for me, the Lions offer the best balance in the league when it comes to offense, defense, and special teams. But, if Vernon Adams becomes old Vernon Adams, which he has shown the flirtation with, and obviously the 6 interception game is an example, he can kind of give you a chance if you're on the other side. So, but he's also shown the ability to bounce back and correct. So I would say the Lions are the best team in the league. Not by much, but I would say they are.
Well, the table has been set for what could be another outstanding Week 7. Folks, the CFL this week, just another example of the outstanding, informative, entertaining, and fun content you can enjoy on a daily basis on the Ticats Audio Network. As we always ask you, link, subscribe, share, comment whenever you listen. If you listen to your favorite podcast, and hopefully it's a CFL this week, because we love bringing these guys, and we really appreciate your opinions. And fun facts, guys. Jamie, when our listeners or this part of the country want to contact you or talk CFL football, how do they do so?
At Jamie Nye on Twitter is the best place to find me, and of course, check out the Green Zone. We talk in Saskatchewan. We talk a little bit of CFL football on sports shows, just a little bit.
I talk a little bit with you, Jamie. You talk a lot.
Well, you can't talk about Bedard any longer, so it's tough times for the time being.
Exactly. That ship has sailed. So we'll hope for the next iconic WHLer to come through Saskatchewan.
Ted, of course, we want to read your content in the Sun, and how else can we contact you?
WinnipegSun.com. Of course, we've always got tons of Blue Bomber coverage. We love covering the CFL and do it every day. So that's a great place to start. And Ted_Wyman at Twitter is a good spot. I'm on Threads too, but I haven't really.
I know.
Yeah, we all went on. Yeah, we went on the Threads and then went, no, Twitter's not dead yet. So
not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. Hey, Dave, are you on social media, Dave?
Yes, I am, sadly. Dave_Chet on Twitter. I will be on Twitter until Elon breaks it finally, breaks this medium into bits. Then I'll probably join Threads. And if you want to find Elks content, you go to 630ched.com/the Elks page and fill your boots there.
Yet another outstanding conversation of CFL football. Folks, enjoy Week 7. And guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been another solid performance on the CFL this week. Again, you can find us every single week talking CFL football on the Ticats Audio Network. I'm Bubba O'Neil. Enjoy Week 7, and we'll talk to you next week.